Hi, and welcome to Group Chat, a podcast brought to you by Projective Group. My name is Pieter, and in this podcast series, we invite people from our organization to tell their stories, delve into their experiences, and share their knowledge. Today, I am joined by Stefan Dierckx, founder and CEO of Projective Group. Welcome, Stefan.
Morning.
Stefan, today I'd like to talk to you about who Projective Group is or strives to be as an employer. But before we do that, let's first talk a bit more about who you are. Can you quickly give us an overview of your career path up until today, let's say?
My career path?
Yeah.
Started a very long time ago. I graduated in 96 in the meantime, studying applied economics here in Antwerp.
Yeah.
And then after graduating, I stumbled actually immediately into first job. Maybe a fun fact, I never in my life had to do a job interview.
Okay.
Never done it.
How did that happen?
The reason for it is because I, after graduating, I actually needed some money.
As we all did.
As good students, you're always looking for money. And so after graduating, I started a student job to earn some money. And then the plan was to do some traveling and have some fun, etc. And then actually start looking for a job. Yeah. The problem was that the company that I then worked for and did my student job, at the end of the month, they said, look, we have a very interesting number of new projects. It was a growing consultancy company, actually. Mm-hmm. Are you interested in joining? But we need to know now. And if so, you need to start next week.
Okay.
And so the plan of traveling, having some more fun, and then conquering the world, and doing that as of October or November, that didn't materialize. So especially in these days, I also still got some pressure from my parents saying, "You are nuts if you don't accept." Yeah. And it's very hard to find a job. In those days, it was a bit harder to find a job than it is now. And so I immediately started to work on the 1st of August for the company where I did the student job.
All right.
And then I actually stumbled into the financial industry because it was a company that did multiple industries, but I ended up doing projects within the banking industry. And that then later evolved after a few acquisitions and so on into a new story around Capco. In the old days, it was called initially the Capital Markets Company, a very ambitious company trying to conquer the world in a very short period of time. You have to realize that this was the crazy days of the dot-com bubble, so money was no issue. If you had dot whatever behind your name, everybody started to throw money at you. No questions asked. Same with us. So we had a lot of money. We had a very aggressive growth initially in the first years. The bubble exploded.
As they all do eventually.
As it did with a lot of companies in these days. And then I decided to leave the company in 2004. And then basically said, I want to do it myself. I want to do it better.
Yeah.
Sounds a bit arrogant, but at least that was the ambition to start something a little bit different than what Capco did in these days. Because what they did was mainly focus on the consulting parts. So really advising, doing pieces of analysis, business cases, etc. And the issue that I had was that when the actual work needed to start, after doing the advice and the studies and the business cases, etc., that's where typically Capco was not heavily involved. Yeah. And that's where the fun starts. That's where you really see the change. That's where you see the implementations and also in the end the results, of course. And so we started to explore the idea of building a company that focuses much more on helping to deliver that hardcore change. Initially with focus or roles around project management, program management. So a combination of hardcore expertise in project delivery, right? So and experience, but combined with an expertise in areas in the financial industry. It can be retail banking, corporate banking, financial markets, etc. And that was our original concept. Let's focus on that. Let's focus on these specific roles. Let's take a very neutral attitude. So we're not linked to any software providers or any other consultancies, etc. We just are that neutral party in the game with one focus, which is getting the change delivered for our clients.
Yeah. From a timeline perspective, so you graduated in 96. What year are we when this is all coming together?
10 years later. So the Projective as a company was started in December 2006.
Yeah.
I think it was the 8th of December.
Yeah.
And that's when the journey started. So it was exactly 10 years after graduating.
And can you tell us a bit? You already said what the mission was of how you started then, focusing more on the change rather than saying this is how you solve a problem, but don't involve us in actually solving it.
Yeah.
We're now a very international organization. Lots of people on board. How did that happen?
How did that happen?
Yeah.
Not overnight.
Yeah, I assume
As
that.
I said, it's December 2006 till now is still a long way to go. But the first, let's say, 10 years, we focused very much on having senior to very senior profiles on board, focusing on these program management, project management type of roles in a very international context, because with all respect for the Belgian banking industry, it's not huge. And so if you want to grow as a company, from day one, we had a very international approach. So we started doing work very quickly in the Netherlands, then evolved into the UK, and then gradually the other entities were also created. So it was also part of the DNA that we wanted to work internationally. And the first 10 years was spent on building that international network, building that team of, after 10 years, about 100, somewhere between 100 and 150 colleagues, and focusing on, again, these change initiatives, these large change initiatives for our clients. What happened then is that after 10 years, we, I think, established a solid footprint in a number of countries, also with a number of very large clients. Banks, insurance companies, market infrastructure players, so exchanges, clearinghouses, etc. And so the point that we got was that our clients started to give more scope to us and asked us to be involved not only with one or two roles, a project manager, a program manager, a PMO, etc., but really assemble teams, larger teams. I mean, in the context of us, it was, let's say, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. And then the issue that we had was that we only had very senior profiles on board. So if you look back on these days, I think the youngest that we had in the team was 32, 33 years old, and that was the rookie. Yeah. If I look at you, you would be definitely a rookie.
Yeah. Maybe I still am. Who knows?
Maybe you still are. But that was the case, and so we started to think about changing that model a little bit. If you look at the larger consultancies, they typically have a pyramid model. We had a reverse pyramid. We had a very, very senior base of colleagues and hardly any juniors. So it was really a reverse pyramid. And so we started to reflect on maybe we should change that a little bit, not to become another Big Four and have a pyramid model, but maybe a cube is better suited, so that we inject young talent in the organization, that we train them up, we learn them the business, more on a one-to-one relationship.
So a model with a bit more angles, like figuratively and even literally.
And not just a model where you have busloads of 10, 15, 20 junior talents that are being supported by one or two seniors, but really more a one-to-one type of setup. But it also means that you need to start attracting young talent. You need to train them, support them, coach them, etc. So that's a model that you need to develop, and that actually resulted in first acquisition with Excelis. So Excelis here in the Belgian market, very focused on supporting young talent, supporting them in their first years of their career, which was actually a very nice model that we could add to the group that we then had, in order to support and attract young talent that also have the ambition of becoming a consultant at some point. So next to the original Excelis model, where we offer young talent and position them at our clients with the option to onboard after a certain period of time, we now also had the recruitment engine, but also the support, the coaching, the training, etc., to support potentially young consultants that we train up on the projective side. And that's a model that actually worked and still works very nice. We use that support and coaching model very intensely with our young talents, and we can combine that young talent with the seniors that we have in our organization, and then offer more team type of setups to our clients. Yeah. So that's that gave us actually the first flavor of acquisitions, and an acquisition for us was something completely new. We never had done any acquisitions, but it definitely resulted in an acceleration of growth. Immediately you add 100 and something colleagues to the group, different management teams. So it all comes with challenges, integration challenges. So this was all something new for us, but it definitely gave us a flavor that, well, we can definitely accelerate our growth and reach our overall ambitions, and we'll come to that probably a bit later, in a much quicker way. Yeah. And so that actually resulted in building a business plan where we said, okay, let's focus actively on what we call a buy and build. So we continue to organically grow, but we also want to complement with additional acquisitions in the different countries that we operate. And that's the story that we've now been building over the last 4 or 5 years. Yeah, and that's also when Projective went from being Projective to being Projective Group. A group, indeed. So what we did strategically is we acquired very specific niche consultancies in a specific area of the business. So, for example, in data, in payments, in risk and compliance, etc. And next to that, we also added footprint, as we call it, in the countries that we currently operate. So in the Netherlands, UK, Germany is on the list, Belgium, France is also on the list. So the overall ambition is that we can cover our client or support our clients from these financial centers in Europe, and that we establish a very, what we call, relevant footprint in every country, but also that we can support them with niche services that are hot today on their agenda. Yeah, around payments, around risk and compliance, and so on. I can imagine that this growth, quite significant growth, has also impacted your role. How has this impacted your role? What's been different compared to the early days, compared to 3-4 years ago? Well, compared to the early days, it's night and day, of course. I mean, as in the early days, you're a startup. Basically, you have to do everything yourself. If you don't do it, it's not done. Simple. So in the beginning, it was even the invoicing, the payrolling, the sales. I also did obviously client work. I think probably up until 7 or 8 years ago, I was still doing project work for clients. With the growth of the company, it's not possible anymore. It's something I still enjoyed doing, and it's one of the things that I definitely miss. But yeah, okay, it is what it is. But in the beginning, you're a startup, so any CEO or founder of a startup will say and confirm you will have to do everything, really everything. And so that obviously changes with the growth of the company. What you see is that when you grow from 0 to 20, that's one step. From 20 to 50 is the second one. From 50 to 100 is again another one. From 100 to 250 is another one. And then the next step is 500, and the next step is over 1,000. And each time you see that there is changes in the role that you have, the responsibilities, the expectations. If I look at the first 20, 50, if you have a relatively small team, the communication lines are very closed. You don't need to actively spend a lot of time on doing formal communication because everybody is involved in everything. Once you reach now over 1,000 people, then it's a completely different ball game. You need to spend a lot of time on communication, aligning people around the strategy that we have defined, making sure that everybody understands the strategy and all the implications of that. So the role has obviously changed completely, I would say.
If I look at my own career, I'm now 7-ish years in. I've learned a lot or I benefited a lot from other people as well. And so I've had a lot of people taking up a sort of mentor role, some even more coaching role. People in my professional network also assist me with a lot of questions or challenges I run into. You just described a lot of challenges. Basically, with every step, there's something that you need to learn. But I can also imagine in those first days as a graduate just starting out, you also sometimes struggle or face certain challenges. How has, let's say, for example, coaching or mentoring or other people in general helped you with that along the way?
So from day one, when we started the company, we established a formal board. And I can only recommend every founder of a company to do that. And not with their best friends, but really with people that know about the industry, that can give you or pass you some tough messages, because otherwise it doesn't have any value. So from day one, we had such a board with very knowledgeable people. Gradually over time, the board has evolved with acquisitions, etc. So I don't want to go into detail, but it's very important that you have that independent board. That for me, it's always every quarter, a formal almost report that we need to present. There's always some pressure around it because you need to make sure, of course, that the numbers are okay, that the business is running, that everything is under control, etc. So the board is a very important factor and source of advice and mentorship from my point of view. Within that board, there's a few people. If I look at Jürgen Ingels, if I look at Frank Verhagen, and a few others that actually. They've been there, so they've seen companies growing up. They've seen the pains. They know the struggles. They understand the struggles. So it's very important for me to have them as coaches, as mentors. I mean, it's not that we on a weekly basis sit down and have a one-to-one discussion every for a few hours. That's not the case, but in the conversations that we have naturally as part of the board, etc., there's always stuff that they can advise on, and that is important to take into account, of course. Again, also my role evolves, as I explained before. And these are things that I've never done before. So it's good that you surround yourself with people that have done it before and that who have been there and that can say, watch out for this, watch out for that. Which doesn't mean that you need to literally take any input that they give, but at least they warn you for things that could happen and that they've seen over the years. So it's very valuable, and again, I think everybody should have the necessary coaches or mentors in order to evolve. And what is also important is that you surround yourself with people that actually motivate you and push you a bit. To go further. If I take the example of Jürgen is in his way very good at giving people the confidence. Just do it, just go for it, and we'll figure out what happens. So going a bit further than with our ambitions and accelerating our growth, thinking about a much larger scale. That is typically something that we as Belgians don't have in our DNA. And I think he's the one that is one of the few in Belgium that actually has that push and the advice to actually go the extra mile. Yeah,
all right, that's interesting. If we then look at and we already touched a bit on it, but if you look at Projective Group as an employer, and there's a lot of people on board already. Some joined us a very long time ago. Other were part of an organization that was maybe acquired and integrated into the group. Some even then joined later on. If I were to ask you the question, why should people join Projective Group according to you? And you can interpret this very broadly, from people who join us as consultants doing multiple assignments at our clients, from people joining us as trainees who integrate at their client that we match them with, from people who do more project term, shorter based assignments, and then everyone from graduating or freshly graduated up until 30, 40 years of experience. Why is Projective Group, or should Projective Group be an employer of choice according to you?
Well, it depends, of course, on what your ambition is. And we want to excel in one sector, which is the financial services industry. So I'm now talking about the consultancy part. I'm not talking about the talent part. But in the consultancy industry, we have only one niche, which is the financial services sector. So banks, insurance companies, market infrastructures, that's our turf. And that's where we really want to compete and make a difference against Big Four and others. We want to be big in these niche areas. And I think we are definitely getting to that point in certain markets in Europe already. And our goal is to build further that footprint to be really that relevant player and compete head to head against these larger consultancies. What makes us different from these consultancies is that we, first of all, have an extremely flat organization. We do not have any levels in the organization. People have, within our group, a role, a responsibility. Most of our consultants obviously have a certain client engagement where they also have a role. But the last thing we want is that we have 27 different levels and you need to first spend 2 years being at that level and then another 2 years at that level and then so on. The ladder principle is something that we definitely don't like. We don't want it. We want to focus on your individual career. We don't want to focus and start comparing and introducing a competition between colleagues. We want them to collaborate. And by collaborating, they all learn. Some will advance quicker. There's nothing wrong with that. And some would also advance slower. And also that is not a problem. We're not in an up or out model where if you don't advance quick enough, then we throw you out. That's not the goal of the company. And so it's very individually modeled with the necessary support, the training, the coaching. I mean, there's an entire model that is built around it. And that's, I think, what makes us unique. We want to make sure that you as an individual can focus on the things that you want to focus on, obviously within the context of the business, to be very clear. But do it at your own pace and within domains that you want to excel in. Yeah. That's basically how we operate.
Yeah. So you could say then that you allow people to have more impact in a sense, those who want to have impact don't have to wait to become mid-senior or whatever level comes after that.
Fully agree. I mean, we have examples in the company of very young people that very quickly make an impact and actually step up and take initiative. What we're looking for is people that actually take initiative. So you don't have to ask for permission. It's better to ask for forgiveness if you made mistakes. And people can make mistakes. But please take initiative. Be within the company almost an entrepreneur. We're looking constantly for entrepreneurial people. And just if you think this is a good idea and it helps to further develop the company, do it. Yeah. And you don't have to wait 5 years to reach a certain level before you can start doing these and these and these activities. No, if you're good at it, if you want to give it a try, you will always be supported. And of course, is everything successful? No, but at least you can learn from it and then move on.
Yeah. Some other thing I want to touch on is I've over the last months and years, I found a lot of excuses that were well enough to visit all of our other offices in London, in Amsterdam. Something that I always see coming back, and we have it here in our new office here in DGM as well, is a bar. Mm-hmm. I mean, every once in a while, I'm working in the office. I see people come in who have never been here. be it a new client, someone coming in for a job interview. It's really funny to see how people look sometimes when they come in and they see a bar in an office. What's the concept? What's the idea behind a bar in the office?
The starting point was actually up until 8 or 9 years ago, we didn't have an office. So it was all very lean and mean. Anything that was an overhead cost, we looked at it very carefully. But then, of course, you reach a certain size and it becomes a bit too big to do all the meetings in restaurants, bars, hotels, etc. And so our architect actually asked, okay, but how do you actually do it today? Because you're now a team of, 50, 60, 100 people. We said, whenever we need to sync, we organize something in a local tavern, a bar. And then he said, but maybe it's good that we actually create your internal bar. And we thought, that's maybe not a bad idea. People immediately have, as an outsider, the reflex, but these guys are running around always as of 11 o'clock, completely drunk, and there's a culture of partying, etc. It's totally not the case. So far, I've never seen any abuse in the bar, and I think we now have it already for quite a few years. But what is important is that bar is a meeting point, is a point where people can connect after work, typically Thursdays, Fridays, etc. It's the connection point that makes it so important. It's not about the alcohol or the people are very professional and very reasonable when you talk about the bar consumptions here, but it's the connection point. And having that connection point within the bar, within the office, is much better than that. Certain groups after work go to bar A, B, C. Another group goes to C, D, and E. Then it's spread out. Here we have it concentrated within the office, and I think it's probably the best investment that you can do as a company.
Yeah. So it's more of an. It's also there for the fun stuff, but it's also it becomes a sort of communication channel.
It is the communication channel.
Yeah.
It's the most important communication channel.
All right. For those who are watching and listening, you can't see the bar at the moment, but feel free to swing by. You're Definitely. More than welcome. Stefan, to wrap this up, we've talked about your path and who we strive to be as an employer. I assume that you've learned a lot or picked up a few lessons as well along the way. A few. What advice would you give to those who are currently listening and watching, if they still are?
Well, if you are a young talent, graduated first couple of years of experience, what is extremely important is to focus on the learning path. I see, unfortunately, too many young talents that graduate from university with a very clear focus on getting the maximum out of comp and ben, cars, etc. My advice is don't do that. You need to be paid in a decent way. That's very clear. So you've reached your diploma. You need to be compensated in a correct way. But the first 10 years of your career, please spend it on learning. Please spend it on experiences that you can gain while working at clients or certain companies. And if I look at it from my personal point of view, spend it on working in an international environment, because that's where you really gain a lot of experience. If you've worked on projects with colleagues in London, in Germany, and every country has its specificities. Every country has its own style and culture. The more you've worked in an international context, I think personally, the better you become as a professional.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I see too many young talents that say, but I'm not sure, because then what happens if on Thursday evening my friends, my padel or my tennis is going to drop? That's not an argument. And it's so crucial that you learn from an international experience. It will pay off over the longer period of time.
All right. Thank you very much for your time, Stefan. Besides you, I also want to thank those who have been watching or listening up until now. If you found this interesting, don't hesitate to subscribe to our channels or share this episode with people who might find this relevant as well. If you'd like to know more about Projective Group and who we are as an employer, you can find all the necessary information in the description. Until next time, bye-bye.